Hey everyone, Andrew Bryanson back here with my fourth video blog. And today, what I'm going to get into is actually running the race. So, whether it be a marathon, half marathon, whatever you're training for, I'm going to stick to maybe talking about a marathon. But really, it can apply to anything. I'll use, the kilometer markers and mile markers for a marathon, but it can be used for half marathon, 10K race, whatever you're training for. It's really got to be applicable to that as well. All the tips will be applicable to that. So I'm going to start really on when you wake up in the morning. I'm not going to get into, your pre-meals or your pre-race meals before breakfast and carb loading and all that. I'm not going to touch on that. Maybe I'll touch on that on a different topic. But really, I'm going to talk to first at breakfast. So when you get up, I usually say get up a couple hours beforehand. You don't want to just roll out of bed and go straight to the marathon. You'd rather give yourself some time just to sort of get in your routine and make sure your food's digested and all of that. So what I usually say is in the morning, you need to eat a little bit more breakfast than you usually would, because the last thing you want to do is you get out there and you're halfway through and you're hungry. Just tells you you probably haven't had enough. Now the food needs to be something that you're used to. So I'll suggest what I have, but just do what you're used to. Do not try what I'm telling you I'm having on marathon day. Try it, and of course, hopefully you wouldn't, but I might as well just say it just in case. Try it in your own routine if it works for you, or if you're happy with your breakfast, by all means, stick to your breakfast. What I usually have is I have about, on a normal training day, I would have about probably 250, 300 calories worth of dry cereal. So for me, I like low sugar. So that could be, for me, Rice Krispies or Cheerios. I really don't deviate too much from the two. So if I usually have 250, 300 calories, I'll have about 600 on race day. And really, I eat that about an hour beforehand. So cereal just for me doesn't take much to digest. It's easy, super easy to digest. It's not something you're going to get cramps from. I have a big glass of water. I have a banana, and that's it. And I roll out the door, and I try to get there 20 minutes before the marathon. I don't like standing around too much, especially if the weather's bad. I also say, don't worry about standing up marathon day, the couple hours before. It's not going to hurt you. I used to just try and sit down as much as I could, and I just found I was getting stiff, and it probably did more harm than good. So I just stand up the whole time. I don't sit down before the marathon. I just help my body get going and show up at the start line. So next tip that I'll say is, really when you're starting that marathon. So when you're getting out, and it goes without being said, I'm sure, for the people that have run a marathon before, but I'll say it anyways. You need to bring back the speed off the stars. That is one of the key mistakes that so many people make, and I kept making for 5 marathons. It took me that long I would know I need to start slow, but the emotion, the energy, and I just said, maybe I thought too much, I could do too much that day, and I would just bolt out and I would pay. I would always pay, and it didn't matter. I just would keep doing it anyways until I finally just was able to rein myself in. And it probably took me 5 marathons to implement just actually staying slow off the start. And when I say slow, I don't mean crawling out walking. I just mean, what's slow for you. What's normal pace for you. Your normal, whatever you think you're going to run at, try not to go too much above that speed off the start. Even though everything in your body is going to tell you otherwise, that it wants to go, try and dial that back. And one tip that I'll give too, and this is my biggest tip for anyone who's running a marathon with music, listening to your headphones along the way. I'm one of those people. I need that. I run with it while I train. And the tip that I'll give, and what I'll tell you what I used to do, probably for my first 10 marathons, is I would listen to music that's for the whole thing, right from mile 1 all the way to mile 26. I would listen to music, and I found by mile 20 or kilometer 35, I'm done with the music. I don't want any more. It's counterproductive now. It's annoying me. I've been listening to this darn stuff for 3 hours. I don't want to listen to it anymore, even if there's new songs. It's just one of those things where eventually it's counterproductive. So what I started doing, and then taking into consideration that I need to dial back my speed off the start, I found that if I left my music off, so I still carried it with me, of course, and it's not very heavy to carry, but I just put my headphones in my back of my hat so it was easy to carry around. I found that if I did and left it off until the halfway point, that accomplished a few things. First thing, it kept me from firing out too fast off the start. So it dialed that back a little bit. I didn't have all the same, music and emotion. I just had to deal with sort of the emotion and the start gate and everyone being energized and stuff. I found it helped me go back to being sort of my normal pace without having my music on. So that's the first thing it accomplished. The second thing it accomplished is that once you get to the halfway point and you throw the music on, it gives you like a second life, a second breath of fresh air. It gives you that jolt that really you need, especially the marathon here. You go on to a trail for about 10K right at the halfway point, and it's boring. And I found like it brought life to that trail, and I started firing by people and running negative splits. And I really attribute it to that strategy of holding off, listening to your music until at least halfway. I usually put it on around mile 14, 15, kilometer 23, 24, throw it on at that point. So I found it gave me such a boost. And running negative splits is so good in a lot of different ways. It's one of those psychology type elements that you have with running, where if you're passing people towards the halfway point after that, it almost like it snowballs, and you just want to keep passing people. And yeah, sorry for the people I'm passing, but whatever. You're running a good marathon, you're running a smart marathon, and it's just one of those things where it snowballs because you feel like you're getting faster, and you got to be careful at the same time. I've got to the point too where I would be too fired up once my music is on, and then I just die maybe 10 kilometers after that. So you got to rein that in and make sure you don't bolt too much when you throw your music on. But that's one key tip that I'll give, and that's at the halfway point. Really, I'll get into sort of dialing it back a little bit and go back to some of the water stations. For me, I guess my body's used to it, but I don't. It takes so much energy, and yes, you need to keep fueling, but you don't need friggin' Gatorade every 2.5 kilometers or whatever. And God bless those volunteers that are out there, thank you, that are at every water station, but you do not need Gatorade or water every 2.5 kilometers. You don't. And it takes so much energy to get that little cup and without spilling all over you and drink it. It takes so much energy to do that you don't need that frequent of Gatorade. So maybe it's every 5 kilometers for you, whatever you're used to. For me, I'm probably every 10 kilometers. And again, you need to make sure that your body's used to that, but that was for me for that part. So the next tip I'll give is, this is probably throughout the marathon, but just being careful of the group maybe you get stuck running in. So what I mean by that is that you'll likely funnel into some groups that are going relatively the same speed as you, and you got to be careful, and more so that you're not staying in a group that's too fast, just because they're really nice and they're encouraging and everything that way. If they're going too fast, you got to let them go. You got to, because if you go too fast, you're going to pay for it later. You won't be able to keep up. It'll be just a negative tailspin you'll get into. That's just a definite no-no. If they're going too slow, at the same time, at least that's a better mistake to make. But you want to be careful that you're not dogging it too much, because even if you do have a negative split and a better second half, well, maybe you could have done better. You want to find that balance of making sure you're not going too fast, but at the same time, make sure you're not going too slow either. So finding that happy medium with groups. One example, and a funny example I'll give you at this past marathon that I was in, is from kilometer 8 until kilometer about 17, I had a guy behind me sticking with me for 9 kilometers. And of course, I'm not listening to my music or anything at this point either, so I'm listening to him. And every about 30 seconds, here's what he was doing. He was going and spitting like literally every 30 seconds for 9 kilometers. I listened to this guy, and my everything in me said, go faster to get away from this clown that's behind you. But that would have been a big mistake. I did sort of try and lose him a little bit within reason, and I couldn't shake him until he eventually crashed and burned, I think around kilometer 17. But that's one example too of maybe someone's annoying you and maybe the shoes are squeaking, or they're just irritating. Stick with them. And if it, just try not to get out of your routine, no matter whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Stick to your race, stick to what works for you. And like I said, that's a funny example, but it happens, and it doesn't have to be someone just irritating. It could be a lot of different things at the same time. So that's again another key example that I'll give of sticking to what works for you during race day. The last tip that I'll give is going into sort of the home stretch with it. Hopefully by this point you're sticking to your pace, or maybe you're hopefully getting a little bit faster as you get towards the last little bit. Really for the last, let's call it 5 kilometers and whatnot, you really need to draw on whatever energy you can. There's no real tips I can give for this, but try to have some goal in mind. You should have a pretty good idea by this point where you're going to finish, and just look at your watch, look at your times, and try and have some kind of goal in mind. Now you have a pretty good idea, and the way to get the most out of yourself is either maybe you've got someone in front of you that you want to pass, or maybe you have a time that now you see as achievable and you want to hit. Try and have some goal at this point, because you should be able to hit it on pretty well, or know what's stretching you a little bit to keep yourself motivated. So that's what I usually say. And for that last kilometer, take off your headphones, sort of soak it in and enjoy it. Hopefully if it's been a good race, enjoy it for that part. But those are some of the key tips anyways that I would give for running a good race from start to finish. Pretty common sense stuff, but some things that honestly have taken me a long time to sort of figure out. So anyways, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.